These days on social media, it's the men versus the women versus the men. Are we doing 50-50? As men, are we taking a full 100% of the responsibility? What's going on here? We also hear about the buzz phrase toxic masculinity, but we don't ever hear about what being healthy is. Let me ask you a question. Is it okay if men cry? Is it okay if we show our emotions? Are our men too soft these days? Are we lacking responsibility? Honestly, what do you guys think? Today's episode, I gotta talk to my boy Jay, and we discuss all these topics. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Black is the New Rich podcast, and as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy.
Everything black on black. If I studied that facts on facts.
Welcome back to another episode of the Black is the New Rich podcast, and today we got a very special guest. Honestly, I look at him as a community leader because I was doing my research and I seen the work that he's doing in the community, and honestly, it reminded me a little bit about Nipsey, and that's one of my favorite artists, so that's saying something big, but I don't want to keep on talking. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that introduction, man. Jay Williams, from Toronto, not from LA, even though I got the LA hat on, always repping, and we'll get into a little bit what I do a little bit, but yeah, community leader, I like that. We'll start with that.
Okay, dope. So can you let people actually know what you're doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I wear many different hats. Specifically, I rock with the Toronto District School Board. I was able to create a position that didn't exist within the board.
Oh, wow.
So essentially, I'm an equity coach / consultant, I'll say. Both of my portfolios specifically deal with equity, anti-racism, anti-oppression. But then the other one, the other portfolio I rock with that I really get a lot of joy from is working with Black student success and excellence.
Okay, in the school board?
In the school board.
Wow.
In the school board. So those are the two things I do for TDSB. But then I've really jumped into the world of being an entrepreneur of late. I'd say the past year and a half, specifically as an educational consultant.
Okay. What does that consist of?
So that allows me to connect with school boards, connect with organizations, government organizations, systems essentially all across North America, and help them do environmental scans when it comes to equity, anti-racism, anti-oppression. There's been a real wake of, I'll say, white folks specifically when it comes to anti-Black education, microaggressions, racism in general, equity. And I'm clear about someone like me coming in looking like this to essentially have that conversation. It's going to hit a little different than the average shirt and tie brother, right?
Exactly.
That's not me for the most part. And no shade to those who rock like that, but that's not how I get down, right?
Okay, dope. So can you explain, let's take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you get to where you're at now? Like, let's take it back, let's say after high school. What was going on?
Yeah, so I mean, high school was a great opportunity for me to kind of sink my teeth into really what was important. I was lucky, fortunate enough to have a mother who was deep into community work, similar to what I do now. So I saw that example very early. And I think that left an impression in me as to what's really important for me going forward. Obviously, the goal of chasing money is important, and being able to support yourself and whoever you rock with. But more so, what was I able to allow my legacy to look like moving forward? So high school, good grades, basketball, pretty good student, didn't get that much trouble. Went to the States, played basketball for a bit. Realized,
where'd you go in the States?
So I went to Life University in Marietta, Georgia. Blew my knee out, lost my scholarship. Pretty depressed, and you hoop, so you get what that looks like. And no one tells you that you sign a 4-year scholarship. It's really a 1-year scholarship.
Exactly, at a time.
At a time, exactly. So sent home to have my surgery, and then called coach and said I'm ready to come back, and he's like, "Nah, big fella, we give your spot away." So yeah, that
That's
hurt.
After your first year?
That was not even fully through my first year.
Oh, so it's during the season.
It's during the season.
Oh, geez. So you're a freshman still.
I was a freshman still, a true freshman. So I was done. I came home and looked at opportunities as to where I could go next, but essentially have school paid for still. And realistically, I had an opportunity to go to Barry University in Florida, but only on a partial scholarship, and then Dalhousie in Halifax. So I chose the latter.
And that was the full ride?
And that was, everything was paid for the most part. Yeah.
Okay, dope. And you graduated from Dalhousie?
And I graduated with a Bachelor of Science over there.
Congrats. Well, so what did you take? What was your...
So health promotion, health education. So in the Bachelor of Science, and essentially with that, I thought I was going to be a community educator. Again, it always comes back to community for me. So being able to connect with, your people specifically. And that was what I thought I was going to do. And then, education kind of just folded the two together. So working with community, but then specifically going back and working with, through the lens of education. With my community, with Toronto in general. So that's how I ended up here.
Dope.
Yeah.
So I want to get right into it.
Oh,
I want to
okay.
get right into it.
Yeah.
Because I, you know, this is an important topic, and obviously there's a lot of taboo around masculinity, black masculinity.
For sure.
Just what is a man, gender roles.
We're getting deep.
Yeah, gender wars that are going on the internet, where the women sometimes are bashing the men and the men are bashing the women. So I want to get into some stuff.
Okay.
First of all, I want to know, like, for someone that may say in 2023, is racism still, or race still important?
100%.
Why?
100%. Okay.
Did you know that the black dollar leaves the community within 6 minutes? That's why we are excited to introduce the new Black is the New Rich app, designed for the black community to be more intentional about where we spend our dollar. The directory consists of mostly financial services like real estate agents, financial advisors, tax consultants, mortgage agents, videographers, photographers, and many more. With our app, you can easily find and connect with quality services that are owned by black entrepreneurs. And to ensure the integrity of the service on our app, all directory members are held accountable if they receive multiple bad reviews. Our mission is to circulate the dollar and provide quality services to our community. Download the Black is the New Rich app today and start investing in your...
Against my bag a little bit. So race is essentially what I talk about, right? When I do these presentations, these workshops, these scans, unfortunately, it's still something that needs to be discussed and unpacked. Not everybody's willing to have that conversation. I recognize the importance of leading with that, right? Race doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing. It's a marker. It's an identity. It's a piece of who you are and how you essentially present first and foremost. As a black man, I lead with that first and foremost too.
Yeah.
When you see me, I need you to see my race, right? I need you to...
Why though? Why?
Because that's who I am. That's how the world has shaped me. I'll just say Western society specifically.
Okay.
Because I've had that conversation with friends who are from Europe or from Africa where it's not necessarily a thing, but the way in which we've been, I'll say, trained, conditioned, essentially it has to be that way. And we know the fact that race essentially was something that's been made up realistically by the power that be 400 years ago, if you want to go that deep.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the way in which the systems have been created thus far, you have to talk about race and the conditions that have been set by race. Okay. So I now, in this stage, in the roles and the hats that I wear, I jump into that 2 feet. I'm willing to, again, unpack, engage, talk about privilege. When it comes to race, talk about ways in which race eliminates opportunities for people who look like you and myself. But if we don't talk about those things, then how do we essentially change?
How are the kids responding?
Now, I mean, I've been doing it for years. So I forgot to mention I was a classroom teacher for about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my bad. So I should lead with that too. So in my class, I think a lot of what I do now, I was able to practice first and foremost.
Okay.
I only taught middle school. So with 12, 13, 14-year-olds. So finding ways to ensure that message of the importance of discussing race and recognizing your own privileges and pieces of yourself and identity with 13 and 14-year-olds in language and metaphors and examples that they can understand, I practice there, right? So now speaking to adults, it's easier for me.
Okay.
So how do they respond to it? Amazingly.
Okay.
The goal, again, for me as an educator and whatever hat that I'm wearing is to be able to create opportunities for young people to take the torch and lead. Okay. Right? We aren't going to be here forever. The goal, again, is for them to be able to be instilled with the knowledge, with the know-how of engaging these conversations and then being able to go ahead as 20, 30, 40-year-olds whenever that time comes for them, right?
So when you work with the school board, are you talking to the teachers or are you talking to the students?
No, that's a good question. So I'm talking to everybody.
Oh, wow.
So I'm connecting with superintendents. I'm connecting with policymakers. I help create policy sometimes. I connect with teachers. It really depends on the need of the school, of the district, of the quadrant of schools, we'll say. But there's times I might talk to a young men's group specifically. Okay. I might talk to a BSA, which is a Black Student Advisory Committee. I might talk to a group of teachers. I might talk to a group of principals. It really depends on the need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to know, because I've been a little bit disconnected from the youth since I've been in college and high school.
Right.
And I can't imagine growing up in this social media era.
Oh, yeah.
So what are you seeing from the youth right now? What are they going through?
It's messy.
Yeah.
And I say this to them all the time. I'll speak in the present. I I wouldn't want to be a 14-year-old right now,
Really?
and teenager right now. They're being inundated with a lot of messages as to some things we're going to talk about, right? Masculinity, toxic masculinity. What does it mean to be a man or a black man? The messages they're getting about success and how to get there. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a boomer talking about, Instagram or social media is not for, the weak at heart or whatever the case is. But there's definitely, I think, needs to be an importance or a focus on how to understand the messages that are being thrown at the young people right now.
Yeah.
If you're simply just looking at it without a critical eye, it is easy to get lost. And we see adults getting lost, right?
Exactly.
So I've heard many people talking about they're taking social media breaks to protect their wellness.
Yeah.
So if adults are doing this, who are supposed to have the ability to critically think and be able to decipher what's real from what's not, then imagine a 13, 14-year-old too.
Yeah. Because we didn't have all that
We
distraction,
did not.
that noise. Because I was part of this like men's group for a little bit, and there was about 18 of us that would come every Thursday and just talk about different things, right? And there was a younger kid. He was maybe like 20, 21, and he was telling me what was going on in his life.
Right.
And he's like, yo, like the kids are my age, they're gunning for like a Mercedes, BMW, because that's what the girls are attracted to right now.
Yeah. But that's what they're seeing though too, right? And I think it's important to have some sort of adversity in your life first.
Fair.
You got to struggle. Like my first car was a E190 Mercedes Benz, like 86.
Yeah. Mine was a 90 or something like that.
Right. And because it was a Benz, don't get me wrong, like that's an old car, but it was a hand-me-down.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to the Accord, then the next, and and you build, right? But you got to be able to struggle. You got to have a hoopty first, man. So I get it. But again, if you're getting this message consistently about what's hot and what's not, we had music videos, we had the Odd magazine that was literally a copy of a magazine here and there. But if you turn on your phone and you flip on your whatever channel of social media you're jumping into, and you're always getting that message, how do you tell yourself differently?
Yes.
Right. So again, if I'm going back to my bag of being a classroom teacher, I literally hammered home the importance of being a critical thinker, right? Understanding what's real and what's not, and then jumping into how you can get those things, but understand that it takes some work.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was going through your content, I noticed that you teach students like how to be a man, what is a man, and stuff like that, masculinity, black masculinity. First and foremost, I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is a man? And I ask that because there's so many different opinions going around on social media.
Of course.
They're saying like gender's not attached to this, to that, blah, 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 blah. What is your opinion of what a man is?
See, that's an interesting question, right? So I'm not going to tell someone to not call themselves or call themselves what they want to be in 2023. Do you. Whatever makes you feel good about yourself, or that's how you identify, totally fine. When it comes to talking to my students or just people in general about what it means to be a man, I talk more so not so much about the identifying markers, but on the inside.
Okay.
So I talk about the importance of being emotionally vulnerable, and not keeping feelings or thoughts or those things inside, because how dangerous that is.
Yes.
And I'm speaking from experience, right? Which I'm sure a lot of men, specifically black men, can connect with. I talk about the idea of some of the things we mentioned before, how you see yourself, and how it's important to engage as a man with others, but specifically with females, and the importance of not being tied up in what you think a man looks like or should be. The pieces about money, the pieces about education, the pieces about how to treat, again, a woman and your mother. All these pieces are important, but again, I'm not going to get into the identity pieces because that's not for me to do. That's a tough one, man. It is. I get it. I will say though, I've been educated of late, working with some people who maybe weren't born specifically a man and have transitioned. And again, who am I to tell someone that that's not who they are? I get that it could be controversial, but to me, love is love, man. Be you.
Okay.
Be you. Identify how you want to identify. Don't bother me none. If you say you're a man and that's how you identify, or vice versa, you say you're a woman, that's how you identify, but you weren't quote unquote born that way.
Yeah.
I don't take no skin off my back.
Fair. So we have this talk lately about toxic masculinity,
right?
Black masculinity,
right.
Masculinity in general. What do you think about that whole masculinity subject?
It is, again, going back to the I guess, the indoctrination, I'll call it, of social media. Masculinity is a tough one to tackle, but black masculinity, if we're talking about that specifically, we have to look at where that came from, right? What are we being taught about the black man that's different from all other men? And that, to me, is where we really need to have that conversation. Again, the black buck, if you will, right?
Yes.
The idea that I'm talking about during slavery times, where the black man could take anything. He could lift more. He could, do more in the field. Essentially, he was the ultimate behemoth of a man.
Yes.
So that idea and message has trickled down throughout society up until present day, realistically. And then at some point, we as black men have now taken that message and literally implanted it in ourselves too. So how does that then translate to how we see ourselves and how we navigate the world? It's a tough thing to actually talk about. So when I mentioned before about the young men's groups that I engage with, or the BSAs, and talking to my young black men, I'm trying to have that conversation with them very early, so they don't get caught in that same trap of what it means to be a black man.
Yeah.
So the money, the hoes, the woman too, not just hoes, cars, right? Getting it out the mud, which I totally get that. But if that's only one side you're hearing, you don't know about the other side.
Yes.
About going to school, or about doing a trade, right? Or about learning from older elders, and how important that is, and having conversations about what that looks like to actually go through a process. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but you got to see both sides, right? So if I could be that example for young men specifically, and young people right now, to see what that looks like, still while talking the way I do, just in the way I do, being who I am authentically, then I'm doing my job.
Okay, dope. So I remember I put something a little bit controversial on my story. And it was an actor, and I said it in another podcast, but I want to hear your opinion.
Yep. I think I missed it. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. It was before we started following each other.
Okay.
So it was an actor. It was the actor in Creed 3. I don't know. I forgot his name. The other, not Michael B. Jordan. It was the other one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Okay. So he did a magazine cover,
right?
And he's a heterosexual male, which is all fine. For me, just to make it clear, whatever someone wants to be, it's okay with me.
Of course.
Okay? And you express yourself how you want to express yourself. The only thing is where I had in question, this heterosexual male was doing a magazine cover, and he was acting very quote unquote feminine.
Right.
Like crossing his legs, puckering his lips,
right.
D's, shirt off. So I said something like, is black masculinity under attack with these type of images that we're putting out of our heterosexual men? Like, what are we saying here?
Right.
What do you think about that?
I would say, top of my head, black masculinity is definitely under attack. It's been under attack though. So
in what ways?
So let's just keep it clear. So homeboy and we forget his name, but you know who we're talking about. Homeboy who's in the dress, he's not the first.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not the first.
Exactly.
There's many, especially in Hollywood, right? And how we see some of our quote unquote heroes. There's been many ways in which the powers that be, will say, have tried to demasculate specifically big, strong black men through the how they dress, how they position them, roles in which they're given, right? We hear about Martin Lawrence doing Big Mama's House, Tyler Perry, in whatever get up he got going on, and we get it, they're successful, but why do we have to, meet that image of what a black man does or looks like?
Yeah.
So is black masculinity under attack? 1,000%. That being said, black masculinity is super vast, right? So I say that to say,
elaborate.
It's okay to sit with your legs crossed, right? It's okay to wear fitted clothes. It's okay to show some thigh, right? That's all fine. That doesn't make any less of a man.
Fair.
Right? If I could share real quick, I remember when tight clothes or fitted clothes came into style many moons ago. Prior to that, we were wearing 3XLs and baggy jeans, and I remember being called all types of names because I was doing the fitted clothes before it became a thing. It was called Euro at the time. And I remember I wasn't at home, I was away at school, but when I came back, motherfuckers was on me like, dog, are you gay? Like, why are you dressing like this? Like, why your shirt so tight? Or because I spoke proper English, right? Or because I did go away to school. All these things attacked what we deemed as black strong, big black men, right? And being 6'3", now like 245, I get why people would essentially attack those things because, again, I push back against what's the quote unquote norm.
Okay.
And I've done that my entire life, right? Going back to high school and even grade school. So yeah, there was some struggling trying to figure out who I was. But luckily, as I said before, I had strong, specifically female examples in my life to recognize that, yo, you're doing this and we get it, but like, that ain't a move.
Okay.
Right?
So I want to talk about some of your personal struggles growing up, like becoming a man. What are some of the personal struggles that you've been through that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, no, we talked about this off mic real early. So one of the things I'm currently struggling with at the time is a relationship with my father. So yeah, he wasn't here. He left and moved to Atlanta when I was like 10, I want to say. And at the time, again, if we're talking about toxic masculinity still, I didn't think that it bothered me. And it's now, you know, 30s, later 30s, trying to figure out why some things always felt like it's been missing.
Something.
I've been, and it's been a struggle of late, honestly. But it's also permeated to other areas of my life, if I'm being honest, like relationships, how I interact with other males specifically. And don't get me wrong, I had examples of positive black males in the roles of coaches or uncles, whatever the case is, like street father figures. But when your own father's not present,
this is something different.
100%. I'm not knocking him. I know why he left. I know he had to do what he had to do, and we've had that conversation of late. So we're in the process of mending our relationship, but it took a lot to get there. Like I literally had to like curse him out and tell him how I felt.
Get it out of your system.
And that's not something I would do naturally with my father, because it's very much, even though I'm, you know, damn near twice his size, it's very much a father-son relationship, traditional in that sense. But yeah, I mean, again, I'm sharing, I'm spilling, but I'm going to therapy now too.
Nice.
And trying to.
How's that working?
Difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely something that took some time to do, to, you know, rectify my mind as to why it was important to do. And yeah, it's a process. It's definitely a process, but it took finding the right therapist. For me, it had to be a black male.
Yeah.
This one particularly is from Jamaica, so there's a connection there. He understands culture and language and ways in which we are able to communicate even without communicating. So it's definitely a vibe in that sense. But even from my initial text message, he was texting me, and I didn't even want to text back. I'm like, I don't need therapy. I'm straight.
Really?
But realistically, like, this has been the best thing that's happened to me in a long time.
Wow. Yeah. So I want to just I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because I do feel like our culture could use a lot more therapy, and some of us run from it. And I've talked about it before.
Right.
What was that? I'll say, like, what was that like aha moment? Like, man, I need to go see someone right now.
Yeah, no.
What was going on?
So relationships, and I've always kept this part of my life private, especially off social media. But I think I recently just ended another relationship, and I kept recognizing patterns.
The deep-rooted stuff.
The deep-rooted stuff. So it wasn't the woman. She's amazing. She is amazing. But it was me. I couldn't figure out why I got to a certain point, and then I would shut down. I wouldn't allow anyone to get deeper or closer. I wouldn't allow myself to go further. So I was like, nah, I'm fucked up.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how to get past this. So if I'm really digging at it, it's the trauma that I've been through as a young man growing up, or even as a child. And then figuring out how to, first of all, unpack that, and then see if I can heal from that and move on. So I couldn't keep going into relationships thinking that it's going to be gravy, because it's good in the beginning, but then something always happens, right? And that was, I think, the precursor, the onset for me as to why I needed to move on to professional help at this point.
Okay, so I have another question. Because like these are not even prepared, but I'm
hit it.
I'm interested, because I believe like a lot of us, like especially men and black men, we struggle with the relationship part, right? And we get to a certain ceiling where we're noticing a pattern, like you said, and then we're starting to shut down or act a certain way, or self-sabotaging.
100%, yeah. So
I want to know, like, because I haven't been to therapy yet, and it's something that I'm open to, and I eventually want to go.
Right.
I don't know if you're there yet, but when this situation, or when these feelings come again.
Right. Because they will.
They will.
Yeah.
Okay. So what now? do you think that you'll be doing differently to get over that hump? Whether it's like forgiving your father, whatever, what does that look like for you?
So specifically about the relationship, I like that question, by the way, but specifically about the relationship, I'm hoping, because I'm not there yet, you're right, I just started recently, my hope is that I'll be given the tools or the strategies or whatever that looks like, self-talk or breathing or manifestation or whatever that looks like, right? So there's obviously things out there that we know, but again, when it comes from a professional who understands you, who you've taken the time to like build with, that looks a little different.
Now you can implement practical tools
Literally.
that can help, like you just mentioned, meditation, manifestation, that can help you get over this hump.
And that has to be the goal for me, because otherwise you're spinning in circles chasing your tail, right? But as you mentioned though before, the deeper stuff is what you got to go through first. So I wouldn't want to introduce a woman to kind of where I'm at right now, unless she's willing to kind of rock through that with me, understanding that it might go left or right. Right? None of us are, but I'm not a completed version of myself yet. You're always evolving, you're always learning, but it's really some deep stuff, like end up like crying on the phone or on virtual video, whatever the case is, and you don't even know why.
Yeah, they're just getting it out of you.
100%. And I'm a vault, baby. Like I at least I think I am, but I also recognize, and I had this convo yesterday, I'm an extremely emotional person.
What does that look like for you?
So I cry.
Yeah.
I cry a lot, man. I'm not gonna lie. But I also take things personal. I'm extremely petty. I'm learning to.
I think we talk about it.
Yeah.
I take things personal.
I do,
and I need to get better at not taking things so personal, because an issue will happen. I'm like, Damien, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Then they're like, yo, bro, it's not personal.
But that's the thing. So what I recognized is it's not always about you.
Yes.
So
fair.
if I'm really digging at that part, I'm also extremely like conceited and selfish though too.
Fair.
So I always think it's about me, or it has to do with me, or they responded this way because something I did or didn't do.
So would you say we have to get out of our own way?
You have to.
Okay.
You have to.
Okay.
So as I get older and more mature more, again, these are things I talk about on the regular with friends of late. And even though my circle is small, we have these conversations. It's important to. Getting out of your own way for me has looked like recognizing your faults and who you were as a young person.
True.
But then learning from them, and then instilling those lessons as you get older and repeating them over and over again. So I used to think I was God's gift to women.
Yo.
If I'm keeping it a buck, right? Yeah. I thought I was the best basketball player in a system. I was always a system basketball player.
Yeah.
I thought I was going pro. I thought I was going to be a coach. I thought all these things, but it's supposed to line up like that for me, because again, I thought that about myself.
Yeah.
So although there are some positives to having, some ego and some confidence, I recognize some of the harm that it was doing. Not so much to me, although
Other
it was
people spilling.
But the trail of people I left behind.
Yeah.
Was crazy.
Okay.
Right? I had to go on an apology tour.
Jeez.
And really like start saying, yo, what I did was fucked up. I'm sorry about this, this, and this. Or that time when I did this or didn't do this, I should have been there for that. But yeah, it's again, being critical in how you reflect on things you've done, but then also being honest with yourself.
Do you have a hard time forgiving?
Yeah. Right now, as I mentioned before, I'm still pretty petty.
Yeah.
But I do need people to know, if they're listening to this, if they're hearing me out, that it's love on this side. Okay. It's definitely love on this side. Even though we might not talk no more, I want the best for people. I want the best for everyone. But yeah, I'm not at that stage yet of forgiving, honestly.
Okay. Because even with myself, I would know I had some epiphanies in this last year.
Yeah.
Like I was just realizing, like I would hold certain people to a certain standard,
right, that
I didn't necessarily hold to myself.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's not even to say like I was doing things maliciously, like I was conscious of it, but I had to really reflect and be like, whoa, like I'm so hard on this person.
Right. Did they know?
Did they know that I didn't hold it to myself?
No. Did they know that you were being hard on them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that sounds similar to I found that I was making people wrong. Like my father, for example, as in my mind, I made him so wrong. I made him the bad guy.
Okay. Yes.
Right?
I have a tendency of making other people the bad guy.
But they didn't know.
Exactly.
So that's problematic.
Okay.
Right?
Fair.
That's problematic. If you are mad at someone or you hold a grudge, whatever the case is, but they have no idea, that's on you then. You're the one holding that.
Exactly.
Right? So until you share that, if you decide to share that and unpack that, that's completely your burden to carry, which is a messed up thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I have another question. Is that with your relationship with your father, is the goal to mend it and try to have a father-son relationship that maybe you wanted when you're a kid, or is the goal just to completely understand and be like, Pops, you're just a human being that went through your own trials and tribulations?
No, it's the latter for sure.
Yeah,
It's the latter. It has to be. It's too late to go back to what it could have been as a child, right?
Fair.
And that's something we're engaged. Actually, on the way here, he texted me. I sent him a happy Father's Day message, and he hit me back and he's like, he apologized again. He's been apologizing.
Really?
So the goal for me, at least, and we've talked about this too, is just to build from here moving forward, right? So what are we able to understand about each other? Because he doesn't know me.
How does the apology make you feel now?
It's nice to hear, but again, until I see action,
True.
it has to be that. And unfortunately, so he was actually here this week, but as I mentioned to you before, I just came back from the West Coast, so we missed each other. But I think for him, there's a lot of humanity in where he's coming from, and it really feels like some sincerity. My apologies, sincerity. And that's fantastic to see, but I need action behind that.
I'm just gonna play God's advocate for a second.
I like that you said God. I love that. Yeah.
So, because your dad's Jamaican.
Yep.
And most of our parents are coming from Caribbean, or just they're not from here. And you mentioned that you want to see some action, but I believe sometimes like our parents don't necessarily have the tools to show that action. So what do you think about that?
You're keeping it a buck. So I mean, what you're talking about specifically, what I understand anyway, is the ways in which traditionally our parents grew up, and then expect the child to always be the one to come forward.
Yes.
Right. And I think understanding that's who my father is, him even just taking the step to apologize is huge for him. Right. Reaching out and calling me, or, Jamaicans love WhatsApp. So he's always WhatsApp calling me. But yeah, it's definitely understanding who they are and where they're coming from and the trials and tribulations they've been through, but still finding some sort of common ground to have that conversation.
Okay.
That's extremely important though.
Okay.
It can't be the expectation that you're a parent who's in their 60s or whatever the case is all of a sudden going to be this new woke person and behave in the way that you might want them to. That's not realistic.
Okay. So I want to talk about men and responsibilities in 2023.
Okay.
It seems that when we were growing up, like, for example, like men were having at 27, 28, they may have 4 or 5 kids. It looked like they were the man of the house. They were working. They were just really responsible.
Right.
I feel like we're at some of a lack right now.
Okay.
What do you feel about that?
I feel like the idea of what a man should be in terms of responsibility has changed a little bit.
Okay.
Again, that could be due to a few things. It could be due to specifically the climate financially in Toronto right now.
Yeah.
It could be due to numbers are on the decline of those who are enrolling university. But also it could be just due to the idea that a man doesn't necessarily have to do everything anymore. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but also the rise of just women just living in their independence and being great too.
Do we have to change our expectations?
It's a tough question. The expectation is in the eye of the beholder, in my opinion.
Fair.
I love that, those, regardless of your gender, you take care of what you need to take care of. But the idea that it needs to rest on the man, the shoulders of the man at all times is no longer the norm. That being said, I know how I operate. I know what I'm going to do or continue to do as a person, not just as a man. But there's probably some man part in there too, if I'm being honest, some toxic ways in which I look at responsibilities financially and the household and all that part too. But I think it's up to the individual at this point to essentially take care of what you need to take care of. And for every household, that's going to look different. But I think we need to be open to that conversation that although there's traditional roles as to what a man could be and a woman could be, there has to be some mingling in the middle in 2023.
Times are changing.
Times have changed.
Okay.
For sure.
I want to actually read you a couple stats and we
Go for it.
I talked about it off cam maybe like 2 weeks ago, but it was kind of interesting to me. Pull it up. It says a study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism in 2016 found that testosterone levels in men have decreased by an average of 1% per year since the 1980s. This means that a man in his 40s today has about 15% lower testosterone levels than a man in his 40s in the 1980s. And this was in 2016.
That's 2016.
So it's even more now.
Right.
What do you have to say about that?
I could look at it a few ways. So as you're reading the question, I was thinking, what is the cause, right, of the decrease? And you could look at it holistically. You could look at it through the lens of health in terms of the foods that we eat.
True.
You can look at it a few different ways, right? But I think what you're getting at is, why is it a decrease in testosterone in men, which essentially should be the precursor of what a man acts and behaves and looks like?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not for me to essentially decide. But what I would say is that, again, if we're looking at roles in terms of what a man is and what a man does, that's not based on testosterone, in my opinion.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so testosterone obviously is a hormone in which obviously men have more of than women, right? So that gets to the physical aspects of what a quote unquote man looks like, right? Beard, muscle, size, I get all those parts if we're talking scientifically. But how you behave, that's a different conversation.
Fair.
That's a different conversation. And I don't think testosterone should be the precursor for what that looks like. So a study like that, without reading the full thing, I think that's clickbait, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
That's me putting my critical hat on and my lens of looking at it. Realistically, yeah, I think we need to get at what we were mentioning before, the role of a man, responsibility, financial pieces, all those pieces in terms of the role of what a man should look like and behave like, quote unquote. But I'm not going to bite on something like that about testosterone. Yeah.
Fair. I have another quote.
Go for it. Yeah.
I just want to hear your opinion on
For
some
sure.
of these, because honestly, they're super interesting to me. It says, this is actually a new one. And I was looking for this because I was thinking about the responsibility of a man in 2023.
Right.
And what can be some of the contributing factors that maybe the man 20, 30 years ago may seem more responsible than the man today. So here is another quote, or another fact. Says the average age of a homeowner in Canada in 2023 is now 36 years old. This is up from 34 years old in 2013.
Okay, so 2 years.
2 years.
In 10 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gone up to 36.
Right.
And in my opinion, because the economy is constantly changing and we're in hard economic times,
Right.
This can affect the responsibility of how a man should conduct himself. What do you think?
No, I would say you hit the nail on the head in terms of the economic kind of downturn right now as to potentially owning a property, right? Man, woman, or other. But what I would say is it's definitely difficult out here. And I think we need to look at specifically, does owning a property make you a man, right? Ooh. Or make you seem like you're responsible, right? Where I could look at many examples of those who rent potentially and are still doing fantastically for themselves and maybe are keeping more money in their pocket. I think we really need to look at the traditional ways in which we deem what responsibility looks like or manhood looks like, or just someone who is quote unquote financially set.
Yeah.
I do personally own properties, and I did that early in life, so I was able to know that I have that as my nest egg to fall back on. But someone coming up right now is maybe not looking at it like that, or never had the opportunities I had to purchase property, but is still considered to be financially responsible or a man. There's no less of being a man in that sense. So if we're looking at the financial lens of things and the in terms of the mortgage rates and those pieces, yeah, it's definitely fucked up and difficult to own property right now unless you got $250 in cash for a down payment.
Yeah,
definitely.
Fair. Okay, I want to talk about especially our community and our culture, and obviously you see a lot of youth. Our conflict resolution.
Oh yeah.
I feel personally we can handle disrespect a lot better.
Interesting. Then what?
Than what we see on social media.
Oh, okay. I understand.
Ops
I understand.
This, ops that.
Yeah.
I'm coming for your head if I feel disrespected.
Right.
What do you feel about that?
I would 1,000% agree. I don't know if it's gotten better or worse. If I was to lean towards one way, I'd say it's gotten worse of late.
I think so too.
But again, it's I'm not going to blame everything on music and social media, but unless our young people are getting messages that resonate with them about how to deal with conflict. But it also goes back to what I mentioned before about how do you respond to your own emotions? Do you have opportunities to reflect critically on what it feels like to be angry and not respond in violence? But yeah, this is so, I mean, I'm not going to throw Ja Morant under the bus, but like if that's who the young people are looking up to in terms of a leader, he needs to do a better job of being a leader and being a role model, right? music is one thing, but not everyone has the ability to critically separate what happens in music, which is a reflection of some people's lives, to how you move every day, right? You're not in O Block, moving weight or whatever the case is, having to defend yourself. You live in Brampton, bro. Like, let's slow it down a little bit. Love Brampton, by the way, but it's again, I really think it's the ability to critically separate the two, and find a way in which you can navigate life, social media, music, influence. But conflict resolution as a whole, I see it. I see it in schools. It comes up on my caseload sometimes as to how students are responding to each other, how they're responding to teachers, how they're responding to adult figures. It's definitely wild right now.
Okay.
And they think, I'm not going to speak for them, but what I think they think is that there's a lot of need to respond in bravado, anger, chest puffing.
To me, that's toxic masculinity.
It is 1,000%. But we went through it too, though. So I'm not going to sit here 100%. And perform like it's not something that's 100%. Something we always went through. But I think I'll speak for myself. There was still a healthy fear there for me of authority or retaliation. And I find if I'm just listening to music or talking to young folks right now, they want the retaliation. They want the smoke, so they can go back at them again. And then my question to them is, but what happens when it continues, or if things get real serious now, right? Where we're introducing some serious damage or even loss of life. And then we start talking about, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have ops, or to essentially take what you're hearing in these influences and then insert them into your own life? Do you actually have to do that, or are you choosing to do that? There's a difference. There's a big difference. So these are conversations I engage with our young people all the time, specifically our young men, about how to navigate life inside school and out of school, right? The idea of code switching or cap switching, whatever the case, whatever you call it, being able to understand that you behave like this here, behave like this here, and one is safe and one is not, but there's pros and cons to both. Unfortunately, that's something you have to do. I'm sure you did it in school. I learned it in school and work, but it allowed me to elevate, obviously, and be successful. In an ideal world, it wouldn't exist, but we don't live in an ideal world.
Okay. So I want to ask you, just to kind of create a scenario, because I'm just curious on how you would handle a certain situation. If you feel disrespected today, right? And it happens, right?
Of course.
How are you handling it now?
I'm having a conversation.
Okay. And how does that conversation start? Does it do you show your aggression? Are you like, how does it start?
Hey, listen,
I think that's important.
Of course. I'll be honest. 9 times out of 10, I'm starting with a conversation.
Okay.
That 1 time out of 10, I might get my chest up, especially if I've had some adult beverages, we'll say. But yeah, no, for sure. I lead with humility.
Okay.
I understand I present as a rather large, fully tattooed, big black man, and I get how that could be a little intimidating to some. So I understand the power of language and body language and tone and eye contact, and how I respond today in this stage of who I am as Jay Williams right now looks a lot different than 25-year-old Jay Williams, right? Who did some knucklehead shit. But yeah, humility, body language, a means of showing that there is no conflict on my side. And
you're just looking for understanding.
I'm looking for understanding. I'm looking to settle things down.
Okay.
Right? Because when cooler heads prevail, you can have conversation, but that's not always realistic though too, which requires you to sometimes remove yourself from the situation. So learning how to walk away, learning when to walk away is important. I've seen too much loss of life, unfortunately, and been to too many funerals where that didn't happen. And I recognize the value of life, obviously, first of all, but also being a role model. I can't sit up here and talk about instilling power and confidence in our young people, but then engage in nonsense out of that.
Fair.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned something important. You said sometimes it's knowing when to walk away or how to walk away.
Right.
And I've heard that before, right? But what does that even look like?
So for me, the how to is probably the more important piece.
Okay.
Because the when to will look different for everybody.
Fair.
So the how to, again, is if we're going back to what we talked about before, the understanding of self, right? So the ability to have some resolve in terms of what emotions look like for you. And everyone knows that rising feeling of like, You feel it coming, right? So recognizing what that means for you and how to essentially move away from that. So if that looks like communicating, which it does for me, but I've been through some shit to understand that, it might not look like that for a friend of mine or someone else, right? Or even yourself. It might look like simply just turning and walking away, removing yourself completely.
True.
And that's fine. But it really starts with, do you know yourself as a person, right? And not that our minds go there, but realistically, if you go left with this, what are the repercussions, right? Are you willing to risk essentially everything for this little miscommunication potentially?
Exactly.
And that to me is probably the bigger thing, but our minds don't go there in the moment, right?
Yeah.
All the things that we mentioned before about toxic masculinity come up.
I think personally, I believe I want, excuse me, I would just love to see our culture just diving in more into like meditation, the stuff that you were talking about earlier, because I believe in heated situations, it would definitely, it would change a lot.
For sure.
In the bigger picture.
I'll say this about specific things like meditation and higher being self and what that looks like. That has to be taught.
Yeah.
It has to be taught 100%. I mean, now
from
we're
the
in
ground up.
Not necessarily from the ground up, but that has to be taught, not necessarily in school when I mean teaching. It means just, it needs to be intentionally taught. You can sit there and say, go meditate.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? Right? Unless you actually are top of a professional, someone who knows what that looks like. But I definitely agree with you. That ability to tap into deeper self is important.
100%.
But again, how do you know how to do that? Have you gone on YouTube? Have you been taught by a professional? Like all those pieces are super important.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
We've been talking about black masculinity in general, what it is to be a man. What does that mean to you, to the society? What's going on?
Right.
In the midst of all those different subjects, and there's a lot of people that either believe in a higher power or don't, and I don't judge for either, because I think personally it means it's a personal relationship to whatever you believe in. But in your opinion, how important is faith to moving correctly?
Ooh, for me,
for you,
it's everything that I do. It's everything that I do. So whether it's, you said, a higher power or just a moral compass, right? Being able to tap into what's important for you. Do you connect with an ability to think about others, have empathy, have sympathy? All of those pieces to me are all aligned. So being spiritual, and I am, Christian faith as well too, but I'm definitely leaning more towards the ability to tap into just a higher being in general, and having that kind of align how you move on a daily basis, right? So are you thanking whoever you're thanking every morning before you go to bed? Are you thanking him for another day or thanking them for another good day?
Waking up with gratitude.
100%. And I love that you said gratitude, because that's essentially what this comes down to. Are you able to thank and be thankful? And to me, that has to be taught as well. I would say this generation is leaning away from that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the grandmas like we used to, or the elder folk who essentially brought your ass to church, whether you liked it or not.
I do think we have it. Sorry, not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I do think we have it. I just think the images that we're seeing are just way overbearing. So like you may see grandma for an hour or two a day,
right?
But you're on your phone for 10. Right?
Nah, yeah.
Right? So I just feel like that message is just hitting more, and obviously it's like anything that you practice, you're gonna get great at. So if you practice bad information,
right,
it's gonna become a part of you.
Yeah, no, that's a bar. I like that. I never thought about that. You're absolutely right. If you're inundated with a message about anything opposite than what your elders have taught you, which we never had, right? So, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I just, again, for me, social media is it's a
gift and a curse.
It's a gift and a curse, and that's how I look at it. And I'm just a little bit worried for the younger generation on how they're looking at it, what they're taking seriously, and what they're how they're separating their life from the social media reality.
Yeah, and not to put the onus on education again, but it's important. I think it should be an actual, a course, a subject
100%
on how to critically think when it comes to social media. And the job is not just on educators, right? Because they need that learning themselves too. but parents need to actually understand.
Ooh, that might be something that you bring to the.
It might be.
Oh, that's a big
that's
one.
trademarks.
Yeah.
But no, that's something that's super important, right? The onus can't just be on educators, but all adults in general. But what steps are they taking themselves to do that learning, though, too? Yeah. It's the same thing I talk about when we talk about the importance of anti-Black education and anti-racism education. You can tell a teacher, hey, go teach that, right? But have you yourself then dug into what that looks like? Not just practice it. Hopefully you have, if you're a classroom teacher, shoot. But hopefully you've at least done some reading, some understanding, some watching of videos. You've had conversations like this.
Yeah.
But to just throw an educator out and be like, yo, go teach students how to be good people, essentially, and practice anti-racist behavior, anti-Black racist behavior. You can't do that.
Yeah.
What you're going to get is a watered down version of what that looks like.
Exactly.
And that's super problematic.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say the same thing in terms of critically thinking and responding to and absorbing social media content. That has to happen too.
Okay.
It has to happen too.
Okay. So Jay.
Yeah.
We ask every guest the same questions, the last two questions. And I'm going to ask you the first one.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you received, and what is the worst advice you received? And you don't have to say any names.
No, I'm definitely not calling names. I kind of touched on the best advice I received a little earlier. And this one I will say who it was from. It was from two people, same message, and I'll share two real quick. So the most recent one's from my aunt, who, in response to everything going on I mentioned before, dad, relationships failed, she told me essentially to get over myself. Yeah. And she said, you're an asshole. So if you're watching right now, you know what I'm talking about. But she told me to get over myself and that you're a jerk. And I had to take that.
What did that mean to you?
So again, me being critically thinking, I could get responsive, I could get defensive, but I had to like listen and hear her out at that moment. Essentially what she was telling me is that you've been the star in roles in which you've led in your entire life so far, and that's fantastic, but what is it, as I said before, what has that gotten you? So being an asshole, yeah, you might be successful and have some change in your pocket, whatever the case is. I'm broke, by the way. But there's those other pieces that are as important, if not more important now at this stage of your life.
Within your character.
Within your character. So now that I'm doing this work to like unpack some of these pieces, I think that's kind of where I'm at, right? So that, it wouldn't say as advice, but it's more so like a line that stuck with me, right? So yeah, you're this, but what are you gonna do about it?
Okay.
Do you want to be this person moving forward?
Shout out to Auntie.
Yeah, no, listen, and that was it. And then another piece that stuck with me is from my late grandmother, who passed away in 2017. RIP for sure. She, as I said before, so she's a woman of faith. And I think for me, how I've engaged in every situation, good, bad, ugly, I've always led with understanding that there is a path. And for me, it's not about like a definite path. It's like, okay, here is a path, but there are infinite ways that it can go based on a decision that you might make in that, right? So not truly like left or right. It's like left and then what, and then right and then what. But she instilled this one quote. She would always say, so Jamaicans, you know how that goes. She would essentially say, if I'm on the phone with her, she would be like, or I'd be like, all right, I'll talk to you later. Yeah. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And she would say, if life spares, right? Meaning like, if I'm here tomorrow still, depending on what's going to happen, decisions we make, the faith that you have. And that took some unpacking though too. So I really appreciate, I got that tatted on me right here for sure. Geez. But yeah, the women in my life, by all means, have been everything for me. As I said before, not growing up with a father figure specifically here in my life in Toronto, but leaning on the women in my life, grandmothers, aunts, moms, pseudo moms, pseudo aunts, community members for sure. I think having them lead by example and be the angel on both shoulders, because no devil's on their shoulders. Having them essentially be in my corner, again, good, bad, ugly, has been a blessing. I grew up in a house with 10 people.
Jeez.
And except for my uncle, who was there from time to time, it was all women, right? Cousins, aunts, mom, grandmother. And that, to me, I think is paramount on who I've become as a man now. So kudos to the women watching, by all means. Y'all y'all don't get enough credit, right? Y'all don't get enough credit.
Dope.
That's kind of how I would say, again, not advice, but two real pivotal pieces of information that I've been lucky to receive.
Yeah.
That have shaped.
Worst advice?
Ooh. I don't think
You didn't have to take it.
No, exactly. Oh, I mean, okay, so I wouldn't say it's advice, but I'm a very positive person of late, even though I'm petty and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
There's
Turn
been
a new leaf.
100%. But there's been detractors, right? There's been naysayers, there's been detractors, there's been straight up haters, we'll say, along the way. And as you know, my star has risen a little bit, right? If you do your research in Google, you know, Jay Williams, Toronto educator, you'll see some shit pop up, which is great. I'm very thankful for it. That's the hope in that I can continue to build and grow and become international. But with that, there's been people being like, yo, why are you doing what you're doing, right? You're a teacher. You make 6 figures as a 10-year plus teacher. You should be content with that. You should be happy with that. So that part has been interesting as part of this journey right now. Those who don't necessarily see the vision, which often happens, and I'm cool with that. But for them, I would say just keep watching.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
Yeah. You know what is interesting that you mentioned that people who don't see the vision, and sometimes before me, I get frustrated when people don't see the vision. But I'm learning to be like, hey, God only gave me this vision. I'm the only one supposed to see this, so it's okay that they don't see it.
100%. But that goes back to what we talked about before, like the selfishness or the conceitedness that you got to get out your own way, right? And real quick, I got to give you your flowers. So
thank you.
In doing the research for Black is the New Rich, it's like, oh no, this dude's popping. Let me keep digging, let me keep diving, right? So no, you've created a platform here that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think you're interviewing the right people. Realistically, you're welcome. And I think just keep growing, man. For those who are detractors or haters,
I appreciate it.
Fuck them.
Exactly.
I hope you mind me cursing. I've been cursing.
No, you're good. You're good.
You can go back and bleep all that out.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Last question though, because on the show we like to make predictions. So this is definitely going to be obviously documented, and when it's on YouTube, it's there forever. So in 5 years, where do you see yourself?
In 5 years, Jay Williams is traveling internationally. He is free. So what I mean by free is money's fantastic, right? But I want the freedom right now to be able to pick up and go whenever I want to. And that's not for vacation, right? That's for work. So just came back from the West Coast, as I mentioned before.
Heart work.
I love that. Slid out to meet with some brand and marketing directors, which was fantastic. But what that looks like is being able to spread my message, not just in Toronto, not just in Ontario, across Canada, across the States, worldwide. Again, I'm very cognizant of someone who looks like me sharing this message, right? In ways that only I know I can, right? I've done my Googles, I've done my research. There's no one who presents the way I do with the background research and credentials I have doing this work, right? Everyone else is this or that. Let me not diss nobody, but they don't fit this realm.
They don't look like you.
They don't. Not just look, but they don't come with the same experiences. They don't come with the same language. So even though I do present like this, not even though, let me take that back, because I do look like this, it hits harder for me, for people who need this message, whether they be white, black, brown, Asian, it don't matter.
Hence representation.
But the power and representation is super important right now, right? We need to lean on essentially what's happened. Since the murder, I'll say, of George Floyd, there's been this new wokeness, we'll say, right? And you see it on social media. I'm big on Twitter, so you'll see it on Twitter. And it's important for us to keep that momentum going.
100%.
Although it's waited a little bit, we know that's the case, and I predicted that in the beginning, but it's important to ensure that those who are still open to having conversations are getting this message, right? They're engaging this conversation, whether personally, professionally. They're reading books, they're watching videos. I'm open to any conversation about race at any time, good, bad, or ugly. But in 5 years from now, I need the name Jay Williams to be synonymous with race. I need it to be synonymous with anti-Black racism in education. I need it to be synonymous with someone who is authentic at all times and intentional about what he says and does when it comes to this work.
That's big.
Right? I want to be self-sufficient. I don't want to be tied to a system.
Yeah.
I'm trying to essentially blow up the system, all systems, education, health, government, policing. If I'm keeping it a buck, none of these systems serve us efficiently or equally to our peers who are not just not racialized, but not black. And I need to be firm in that. It's a fight that we're all fighting, obviously, for equity, not equality, but equity, which is important. But there are black issues, and then there are POC issues.
Yes.
I am not a POC. You are not a POC.
Yeah.
None of us are POCs, right? I am a black man. That's how I represent, how I identify. The issues that we face are different than any other person's.
I think that's very important.
We have to have that conversation.
That's very important. I actually never heard that said like that.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
No. But that's what I'm saying. Like I have no problem saying these things.
Yeah.
I know there's pushback. Yeah. I know there are those who want to conflate the issues or issues of oppression that some people might be going through who are POCs. Again, fantastic. We can do that in a different conversation. But when I'm talking about stuff that has to do with black issues only, don't bring your shit over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Keep that separate.
Okay. Let people know where they can contact you.
For sure. I am up for conversations. I'm up to be booked. I'm on social medias. Hit the website. It's imjwilliams.com. I am on Instagram at iamjwill, IAM_J_Will. And I'm on Twitter. I'm big on Twitter. So on Twitter, it's Mr. J Will, MSTRJAYWILL. But yeah, let's politic, let's rap, let's get booked and busy, baby.
Okay, dope. Yeah. So Jay, honestly, I want to thank you for taking your time and coming.
Definitely.
This was a very impactful conversation, and I actually really respect that the fact you're able to get vulnerable on this conversation.
I appreciate that.
That wasn't planned.
Yeah, no.
that wasn't planned, and I really respect it. Just for something that even sticks out for me is that you literally letting the world know, yo, I'm how tall are you?
6'3".
I'm 6'3". I'm emotional. I cry.
100%.
That is something special. So yeah. I really appreciate your vulnerability.
No, I appreciate that. As I said before, when we talked off mic, that was the goal, right? If I'm going to do this work, it has to be veiled down, right? Which I mentioned in another pod too. But it's realistically being okay with people viewing you how they're going to view, which is going to happen anyway. And I'm totally fine with that. But being authentically vulnerable in this scenario right now was part of the plan, man. So I appreciate you allowing me to do that.
Thank you.
Love.
Thank you.
No doubt.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, I'll be back. We got to check that in 5 years.
Yep.
I'll be back.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal.
Yes, sir.
And another episode of the Masculinity Rich podcast.
Everything black on black. If I studied that facts on facts.